Good morning, folks. Today is July 7th, 2025. It's a Monday. Welcome to the Post Morning Show, our unaffiliated Post Morning Show, unaffiliated with Mark Halperin's Two Way. And lots to talk about because Mark was off for a week. So let's just get right into it. Joshua, with your hand up, what's on your mind, sir?
Yeah, thanks. Just real quick before we get into other topics, wanted to say that I'm really grateful that Ribbon's daughter made it out of Texas. It was yeah,
Thank
not
you.
going to say anymore. I'm just really glad your daughter made it out of Texas.
Thank you.
Thank you
It
for
was
that,
quite the
Joshua.
experience. It's still the experience. There's kids missing.
This is Texas flooding that happened, Ribbon.
Um, yes, we got a call on Friday morning. I got in the mom text group that someone had heard that there was flooding going on. I have family in the area, and they let me know what was going on. There's no water, power, Wi-Fi. The water rose 27 feet in 45 minutes. Um, Not sure exactly, but there was a wall of water. I know they were evacuating the kids before they even got the alerts because they were concerned about rain. Um, my daughter started evacuating her cabin in the middle of the night. I got the pictures that everybody's seeing now around 8:30 in the morning. Um, there's still kids missing. Um, the owner of the property has passed away. I think that's no news now, and he was the kindest, most wonderful man. And everybody's doing what they can. And when I see people politicizing it, it just makes me absolutely sick to my stomach. For people who don't know, that river rises and falls regularly, and the cabins were not by the river. It looks that way by the maps, but it's also elevated. It's my understanding that those cabins are like 225 feet away from the actual river. Um, but my daughter was moved from her cabin with her friends to another area, and then they were moved to higher ground. And fortunately, the water receded because the whole camp was underwater. The whole old camp was underwater. Never, that didn't happen. Um, my daughter is fine. I told her luckily she got to ride in a helicopter because I don't like helicopters and she wouldn't ever be able to ride one unless there was an emergency. But thanks, Joshua. I appreciate it. It's been quite the experience.
Yeah, I had someone had mentioned it to me, and I really didn't know the severity of the situation, so I was just a little bit aloof. Joshua, with your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add again, the one of the big problems with stories like this is the knee-jerk reaction to federalize everything in our political discourse. And I just want to put it out there to everybody. Emergency management preparation, emergency management operations, those are inherently local issues. They're at most a state issue. FEMA, whatever you think about the federal government, whatever you think about FEMA takes a back seat to local law enforcement and fire department emergency management resources. I've been a part of these emergency management operations. They're governed at the local level. Sometimes there are, I would say most of the time there are probably regional municipal, cooperatives based on memoranda of understanding by and between local governments. But there's a local government issue. Even when FEMA does get involved, they take a back seat and just provide support, post incident. So there really shouldn't be any politicizing of this issue across the country.
I didn't even realize it had made national news until after I had picked her up. And then I was getting text messages from people. And she, quite frankly, wasn't even supposed to be there this summer. But it's the entire town in that area where those camps are is destroyed. The general store is completely blown out. The roads are gone. And when I hear that, like you said, FEMA and they've cut stuff and all of that, and it's your state, being from California and being familiar with earthquakes, the governments will tell anybody, you better have 5 to 7 days of rations, because in an emergency, there's no guarantee that authorities will be able to get to you. I don't know how many people are actually aware of that, but wherever you live, you should have 5 to 7 days, because there's no guarantee the authorities will be able to get to you. The one thing I will say about Texas is they're resilient, and Texans help their own. And there were people out there with their own boats trying to help. But that's a very condensed area. And the more people you would get in there, you could be hindering the operation. I know that Texas, because I was here during Harvey, we have our act together here. And I wish more states, let me hold back. Texans are Texans. They're not Southerners. They don't consider themselves the South. They're Texans. And we're self-reliant, and we're community, and we're family, and we're neighbor helping neighbor, always, no matter what. We don't care where you come from or who you are. If you need help, we will help you. We don't discriminate. Just don't tread on us, and don't try to get into our business and try to tell us what to do, because we're not trying to tell anybody else what to do. So when I see all of these people who have no idea what the hill country is like, who talk about early warning systems, there's not one system that would have done anything to do this. And it hurts. It really hurts the community. It hurts all of them.
Shamsul, you have your hand up?
Yeah, okay. Just quick one, Ribbon. So glad your daughter make it out. I have a kid, one kid as well. That would have been devastating. I agree with Josh. I think this making it politics over that thing is really over such a tragedy is just unconscionable. Can I pivot, Rahul, at this point to the bill?
Sure.
And Elon's dissatisfaction over the bill. See what other guys think about it, since it's just passed. From my point of view, I did mention a bit during the two-way just now as an intro, because I was quite happy with the bill, because I think the country, whatever America does affect the whole world, actually, and being a businessman that does business all over, it affects me directly. So getting that through and having Trump be able to move the executive agenda, I think, is the most important thing for that to happen as fast as it can, and for that to happen as it did on the 4th of July itself was really, actually, I was quite elated. So I don't know whether anybody else see any issues they still have with the bill, but I look at it from a pure businessman standpoint. I always say this: cash flow is number one, P&L is secondary. So that's my point of view when I look at that. And as an executive, now he can do his job.
Shamsul, what was your over-under on the bill passing before July 4th? Did you think that was going to happen?
I didn't think it was going to happen. I was like, I was actually, that was a really pleasant surprise as far as I was concerned. I thought it was going to get dragged after, and but that was actually quite an amazing job by Speaker Johnson. If you ask me, that's one thing with Trump doing whatever he's doing. I'm going to see my friend probably in August in Texas, in Dallas, and I'm going to have a party with him.
Thank you for that, Shamsul. Let's bring Joshua in.
Yeah, thanks. I would love to get Shamsul's take and any other business takes on the bill with a little more detail. Was thinking about this over the weekend, unfortunately, and I'm really curious if there is a party anymore that actually believes in fiscal responsibility and conservatism. I'm concerned about the deficits. I'm concerned about the debt. I'm concerned about particularly the intersection of debt and deficit spending with an independent Federal Reserve that can do whatever it wants with the interest rates. And I'm just worried that this is going to eventually lead to an inflation spiral. I feel like political wins are just political wins. Having political wins as a goal is just by definition in the country short-term thinking. So I wonder, maybe Shamsul can explain about cash flow a little bit more as it relates to, I don't know, as it relates to this bill. And I don't know if Shamsul is talking about cash flow for the country or cash flow for individual businesses. I'm just not sure. I know there's a good deal of Trump, populist Trump agenda items that are in the bill, like border wall funding and things like that.
Josh, you want
permanence
me
of the
to
tax cuts, but yeah, I just don't.
Chime in now?
I just want to know if we're all playing with monopoly money now, and I shouldn't even worry about being fiscally conservative at the federal level. Okay.
Can I, before we go to other guys, I think I should try and answer Josh how I look at it from a big business standpoint. I've run public companies here in Malaysia. I've retired from it. I'm still on the board of one, and I still have my business. Now, when I say what I mean is actually is this. I'm looking at it when I look at a country being run, including my own, it's not that much different, to be honest, with running a business. Your business dies because of cash flow, not because of profit and loss. Same goes with the country. So you can run a deficit, okay? However, I'm also a fiscal hawk. To be honest with you, Josh, I would love to see a balanced budget, okay? But if I have to run a deficit first in order for me to turn around the company, i.e. also turn around a country, I will run that deficit first, okay? So that's where I'm coming from. Because, Josh, I have turned around company in what in America would be called Chapter 11. Right? Mm-hmm. So you are running deficit, but you're not dead. Okay, you've got to look at growth. You have to look at growth. You have to look at sustaining your cash flow. So that's where I come from in terms of actually where the GDP comes in. The cutting of the taxes is very, very critical actually for that bill. That bill, had it not, if America hit and the tax balloon up there, you will get your inflation, you will get your recession. So that's why for me it was a huge relief that it is not a political show from my point of view. Josh, I was not looking at it as a political show whatsoever. For me, the political show was actually the people who don't understand from the Republican side that he has to make it go first, make the business run first, make the country run first. That's priority number one. Okay, and then sort out all the other fiscal, all the other business issue in order to grow the GDP. That is what I'm talking about. So that's from my standpoint of a businessman, how I look at that, at the country. And the same thing, actually, I tell people when I look at even a country as the size of Malaysia, it's the same problem that we face. Our problem is, I wish I have a Trump in Malaysia. Let me be very honest with you guys. All right, because then we are really looking at, instead of the politics, really getting down to the brass tacks of actually getting the business right. I hope I answer your question, Josh.
Yeah, let's bring Peter in. I'm curious his perspective on this.
I think Shamsul makes really, really great points, especially coming from your experience, which I do not have. The other things that I'll say just from the reading that I've done about a lot of the calculations that people rely on in order to say that the bill adds to the deficit come from things like, at least in the case, I believe, of the CBO, they are not taking into account the fact that the tax cuts are current policy. When you use something like the current policy baseline, I think that changes a lot of the equations on that. I think that Scott Bessent does a really good job of communicating that in interviews that he's done on this topic. And then I think also you do have to take into account, excuse me, you do have to take into account the realities that the Republicans have narrow majorities in both houses, and I think they got, frankly, as much. The bill does cut spending. I think they cut as much as they realistically could, considering that a lot of the Susan Collins didn't end up voting for it, but like a lot of these more like moderate Republicans were not on board with cutting any spending. I think, frankly, considering the narrow margins that they had to work with, I think that the spending that they did cut is an accomplishment. And I do think that one of the things that, if you listen to his interviews, what Russ Vogt, the OMB Office of Management Budget Director, has talked about, and I think it was reported last week that, because they're obviously on the other end, there are the spending hawks, right? And they had to work to get the Chip Roys and those kinds of people on board. And one of the ways that they did that was by promising to do, doubling down on their promise to do what Russ Vogt has said they're going to do in interviews, which is send more rescission bills to codify the Doge cuts, which are cuts to discretionary spending, which a lot of people, don't understand. I'm not saying, people in here, but like people who are less knowledgeable don't understand that those are not in the big, beautiful. They can't be affected by the big, beautiful bill, because that's big, beautiful bill only deals with mandatory spending. And then also to do cuts through executive action. I know that Vogt has talked a lot about challenging, and Trump himself has talked about challenging the constitutionality of the Impoundment Control Act, for example. So I think that there is a lot more that they can do. And Johnson's now, even, who I totally agree with Shamsul, like, say what you will about Mike Johnson. There's, he's done things that I disagree with since he's become speaker. But it is very impressive. And you could say he's only done it because Trump helped him. But I do think it is very impressive how he managed to get this through by the deadline with such a narrow, in particular, and like really historically fractious House majority. I mean, he kind of only got the job because I kind of think of him as a little bit as being like a hobbit. He reminds me a little bit of how he became speaker of Frodo in Lord of the Rings, where he's like, I'll take the ring to Mordor if no one else can. That reminds me a little bit of Mike Johnson sometimes. But yeah, I think that they will make more. I think I think overall, when you take into account things like the problems with CBO scoring and the like, it is a net positive on spending even, and they will do more on it in the future.
Thank you
but
for
they did
that.
the most they could at this point in time.
Correct. Can I add to Peter? Can I just, I wish actually people understand as what Peter has said, they had such narrow margins to play with, and it's like it's herding cattle, two set of cattle, to get a consensus of a majority. Can you imagine that? And then you want to run a country without a budget, and you've got your budget cleared early. Must remember, the CBO did not, I think they did not include the tariffs, at least a minimum of the 10% tariff revenue. And the other thing also, in my opinion, and I see it as this, I could be wrong, people can disagree with me, but I think the Fed is playing politics. The interest rate should come down. I mean, we've got lower interest rate in Malaysia than in the US. What the hell? As a comedian would say.
Thank you for that, Shamsul. And I guess I would like to point out that putting Trump in the conservative framework, again, fails to meet the test, because then it's like, oh, he's spending and conservatives, he shouldn't be doing that. Whereas I believe if you look at him in a actual progressive liberal framework, Trump is making the moves that he believes can, bring this growth about, right? So I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying that why is, if you were making a bet and you're like, oh, well, Trump's a conservative, then you would expect the spending to go down. But you'd say, well, actually, the mainstream defines progressive liberal one way, but if you look at Trump back when the skating rink was getting designed, he said if the mayor of New York is progressive at the time, he'll get with Trump on the skating rink. So just a little bit of an example there. And Peter, did you have your hand up still?
I raised it again.
Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned it was either you or Shamsul just mentioned like the politics of it briefly. But what I want to say to comment on that, and Chris had a comment in the two-way live. It's too bad he's not here. Chris had a comment in the two-way live about how the bill is highly unpopular, and that's, if you look at the polling and people, if you ask people, do you approve or disapprove of the big beautiful bill, the numbers are bad. That is true. But I would say that there is some context to that, in the sense that I think that the bill is unpopular primarily I think the whole is less of the sum of its parts situation in this instance, because the bill as a whole is unpopular because people hate seeing the sausage get made. And it's an ugly process. It's basically dragged out in public for the last 6 months, and it's never going to look appealing, no matter what results from it. But I think if you break it down into the components of the bill, if it's, continuing the tax cuts that, when they were instituted, led to an incredibly good economy last time around, the TCJA tax cuts, and that, deportations, he can probably dispute, he can, point to his Pew Research poll that disputes that mass deportations are popular, but there was a whole range of new polls that came out today showing that, in fact, those are popular, from various different, and not from conservative pollsters, by the way. That's popular. And then also, I think the main driver of spending reductions with these Medicaid work requirements, that is actually popular. I mean, there was a referendum about making people work to get these benefits and it's 20 hours a week. There was a ballot measure in Wisconsin in 2023, just as a good recent example of this. And this was on the same day that a Democrat won the Wisconsin Supreme, sort of like this year, 2 years ago, a Democrat won the Wisconsin Supreme Court race by 10 points. But in that same a Democratic leaning electorate, there was a ballot measure about work requirements for benefits, and it passed with it was literally an 80-20 issue because 80% of the people voted for it. So the Democrats banking their hopes on that being unpopular are setting themselves up for failure.
Thank you for that, Peter. And just so folks know, Claudio is in our YouTube chat, and He's on Team Shamsul. I'm trying to get people on Team Joshua, but right now we got one for Team Shamsul. Joshua, let's try to recruit someone on your team.
Hey, listen, I'm not team nothing. Okay. I'm team I don't like inflation, and deficit spending traditionally causes, leads to inflation because you're printing money in order to pay in order to pay the debt, in order to, to deal with bond investment, right? Like from other countries. So I mean, if we're all playing with, and to be clear, Trump's not a conservative. He's a populist, whatever that means, and that's fine. That's fine, right? But look, if we're all playing with monopoly money now, I mean, what other than like, big grand identity politic culture war issues, what's the difference between Democrats and Republicans? Right? Like, I mean, other than that, I mean, it ought to be way easier to be a Democrat because, Democrats typically, will say, hey, we're the party of, we're gonna give you stuff, and Republicans are the party of, nah, we can't afford to give you stuff. So if that doesn't matter, I, to be honest, why make cuts to Medicaid, right? Like, why even talk about that? I mean, it's all monopoly money. It's just, we're going to print more, right?
Joshua, may I ask one or inject one variable? What about drill, baby drill, and energy? Does that factor in? Right, because under Biden, spending is, electric car charging stations. You got 2, right?
For sure, right? There's follow up that has to be done. I was making some pretty gross generalizations. I think energy independence is a fantastic way to invest in the country, and to be honest, it's a great investment, not just with infrastructure but it's also a great national security investment. So yeah, I'm being a little bit facetious when I say that, but look, I think environmental conservation is important. I think I think Medicaid for people help, a society a society perhaps ought to be judged by its greatest accomplishments, but also by the people that it leaves behind. And I think we ought to be concerned about homelessness, and we ought to be concerned about healthcare for for people who can't afford private insurance, et cetera, right? So I mean, I don't know, 30 years ago that would have put me in the Democrat Party, but
Joshua, though, is there a presumption in that? Is there a presumption that Medicare and Medicaid and just healthcare in general, right, are that versus sick care, right? Is it healthcare or is it sick care?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'll call it medical care, right? So it's not healthcare, it's medical care. If I think the best thing that could possibly happen to healthcare in the United States is for RFKJ to get some regulations involving fast food and involving processed foods, right? Like if that, cutting obesity in this country. Look, you can't rely on people to make the right choices. So sometimes, like Bloomberg did, you just restrict the choices. I mean, maybe that makes me a Mamdani voter, and but look, sometimes just restrict the choices.
Okay, and my plug is, all you lose with allulose is visceral fat. All right, so there's a little plug there. Wesley, you've been waiting patiently. Welcome.
Briefly, I'll just say to Joshua, the line, you can't rely on people to make the right choices, is not a conservative position, right? It is. So you understand.
I agree.
It's true. The problem is we've tried to mask all of the pain that results from bad life choices. So I will say on the fiscal conservative issue, on the national debt issue, it's the number one thing that I'm concerned about. It's unsustainable. Elon Musk is 100% right that Donald Trump he's not, they are spending us into oblivion. I have used the AI tool on X to project out projected spending. Um, and by 2035, the interest on our national debt will double the defense budget. So that's only 10 years from now. The other issue that I have is that um, there is an inevitable demographic problem in the United States and every Western country by and large. And that is the fact that we are not replacing ourselves at replacement rate. We are well below replacement rate, which means that in the next 80 years, just a couple of generations from now, we're going to see population retraction from 330 million to sub 300 million in the range of 280 million. As all the baby boomers will pass on, they haven't been replaced at levels that they were being produced. I say so. There's huge structural problems, and you can't grow your way. You can't have economic growth without more people. You need more products and services, more restaurants, more. You need expansion of the population, and you need expansion of innovation. And so we have downward pressure on us economically and demographically that I think is existential. I mean, because the interest on the national debt is a line item in absolute dollar values. The American taxpayer has to pay that burden. And eventually, the government spending money on healthcare, which is ridiculous at the levels we're spending it. The government spending money on college education, I mean, all of these entitlement programs are going to come crashing down. And there will be
What
societal unrest because Americans have become used to the government helping them out and giving them a leg up. So it's I don't it's a problem. So
Wesley, regarding the passage of the bill, do you see any upshots on the growth side? For example, this is where I would really curious Aaron's take, because I've got an article saying 805 miles additional walls, barriers will be put up. So do you see any upshots in the bill?
not long term. I
Okay.
think it just kicks the can down the road to the next reconciliation bill. I don't see long-term benefit. I see
Or like
I
the
mean,
ICE enforcement, do you see that as a variable at all?
again, I don't think that you should have done that without using existing resources. I think you should have reconfigured your military reserves, and you should have used existing infrastructure because we can't afford it, right? So we need to simultaneously drastically cut spending and drastically cut benefits, and neither party's willing to do it. So we're just heading toward a fiscal cliff. In that sense, Elon's right. It is a uniparty, in my view. And when it comes
So
to
you're
federal
telling me
spending,
in football, you don't like it when they punt?
no, I don't mind a punt, but the fact is that when you've been punting and you're in the 20th overtime and you punt on first down, that would be a better illustration.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Peter, let's bring you in.
Well, to the problem of, population and children and birth rates, first and foremost, for me, there's an economic component to it as well that I'll get to in a second. I think first and foremost, getting people to want to have families again is a spiritual and cultural thing. And, I think that, and Elon says that he cares about that. He says he's a pro-natalist, but the way that he has gone about doing it in his personal life is frankly,
It's reprehensible.
it is. It's
Right.
it's completely spiritually destructive, and it would not. It's something that would be utterly disastrous if he tried to make that into some sort of program. It's like, I want everyone in America to try and have 14 kids with like 6 different women via IVF. It's just absurd. And So like he is not going to address any of that in the slightest. I do think that there are things actually like what is it, the accounts for children and stuff in the big beautiful bill. It's not enough. I think there needs to be a lot more done but I think I think that bringing cost of living down, and energy is a huge part of that. Like, I think that you know, there there can be more that's done. Um, and yes, sure, in some respects, but I think you can't like that doesn't help the people who are here. Like that doesn't help the people who are here. Like the people who are here, deserve to have, should have, you know, their needs served in that way as well. Should be encouraged in that way. Um, so and then I mean, as far as spending goes, like I have a hard time taking Elon seriously on spending cuts when, I mean, EV credits cost money, EV subsidies cost money. So where is he on that? He's
He's on
clearly
record
lied.
saying that they should get rid of him. Right.
I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I don't believe that for 1 second, and there's been reporting to that effect. I think that's just a lie. He's lying. Um, and Yeah, his party's issues are not serious. He's not serious about addressing them, and that's why his one of the many other reasons why his party will go nowhere. And
Correct.
speaking of immigration again, another one of his signature issues is he came out as being super pro H-1Bs, which is something that I hope gets seriously reformed. Trump did some things on it in his first term, but a lot more needs to be done. I saw that Microsoft the other day, they laid off uh 2,300, I think it was, of workers, but they're still putting out, they're trying to get 6,000 H-1Bs. It's an outrageous abuse of that system, and it needs to be severely curtailed.
Thank you, Peter. Dean, welcome.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Ribbon, so happy to hear about your loved one getting out, and yeah, prayers for all those folks. It was and continues to be devastating. Big beautiful bill was indeed big. Everything I'm hearing makes sense to me. Most notably, they got what they could in the environment that they have. You guys know I'll use Ben Shapiro as a proxy for things that I don't dive deep enough into. And as conservative as he is, if he can see the path forward, that it was important to get this bill, that in a sense is good enough for me. A lot of stuff that I didn't like in it. But we need a better majority if we want to get rid of those SALT deductions, so we don't have to rely on our friends in New York and whoever else grabs those to take those out. I think I think the administration. I mean, I really didn't think it was going to get passed by the 4th of July because of Speaker Johnson's rule of the 72-hour rule. But and I'm not quite sure why he rolled on that. If Trump just leaned on him, or did he say we're not going to get anything from the left side of the aisle, so why even try? And you saw what the Democrats did. They just delay. Now I say that, and I do believe that yes, in order to get some type of fiscal responsibility, I don't think a third party is going to do it. I think the moderate middle is going to have to eventually exercise their opinions, their muscles, whatever. But really, it takes the Democrats, in my mind. Again, I lean right. I think it's important for the Democrats to handle their progressive side And they're certainly not showing evidence that they can in New York so far. So I'm happy a couple other cycles and the moderate wing or the blue dog Democrats will eventually come back. I had another thought, but I can't remember what that is. But yeah, I'm excited. I'll end on this. I'm getting what I voted for. This is exactly what I wanted to see. I like the border security. I like what they're doing. The alligator Alcatraz. I swear that the Democrats will bite on anything, man. That I don't understand why they're trying to lead with heart issues on that stuff, and the Republicans are just they're marching on through. Lastly, I will congratulate my good friend Alan C., who is in Florida, but he's a Detroit fan, and he smacked the hell out of our bumbling Cleveland baseball team. So well done, Alan. You got a hell of a weekend there at my expense.
Thank you for that, Dean. Duke, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. Ribbon, God bless you, hon. And just wanted to say to Joshua on his legislation of morality, we tried that in 29 with prohibition, and it didn't work out too well. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just don't think that's the method that would be successful. I don't have another answer for it. But I can tell you that trying to legislate morality or try to legislate people into doing the right thing from people who seldom do the right thing. I don't see that as a practical outcome. As far as the big beautiful bill, I agree. I think it was Dean that said I'm getting what I voted for. Now I don't know. I don't know or don't think it's going to have a big effect on me. Recently retired. I'm in that income bracket where it doesn't have a whole lot of effect.
Duke, are there 1, 2, or 3 things from the bill? Just what your personal, would you stake out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love the work requirement, although I don't know how effective that's going to be. I think Andre pointed out that some flaws in that as far as how difficult it is and all the hoops you got to jump through. I know back in 2019, I was on unemployment and getting the supplemental COVID thing, and those are some hoops. Just getting signed up is crazy. Yeah, the work requirement for Medicaid, because I live in a very rural part of Western North Carolina, and I would say that and my wife's in healthcare, and I would say 60 to 75% of the people are on Medicaid. Mm-hmm. But they drive real nice cars and they have real nice cell phones. So I got to figure out how to make that work.
Thank you for that, Duke. We're gonna do a little reverse here. Peter, then Josh.
Oh, okay. I was planning on them going before me. What I will say on the legislating the idea of so-called legislating morality, I do think that yes, prohibition was a failure, and there's all sorts of reasons for that. I will say, I'm not saying that Duke is saying this, but and I was going to post this in the chat, but I'll just say it. I think the lesson, you can take the idea that legislating morality never works to logical conclusions that are just crazy. Like, should we legalize DUI? Should we? There's also should we legalize? There's all sorts of things. I was once a big proponent of drug legalization, for instance, and I've totally turned my I'm totally again. I think that marijuana legalization was a complete mistake. For instance, I think it's been disastrous. I've spent a lot of time in Colorado. Most of my family lives there. It's been really terrible. And I think, frankly, that even I think that medical marijuana needs to be severely restricted. I think a lot of the so-called benefits are vastly overstated. Alex Berenson has done a lot of great writing on that. His book is, I think, called "Tell Your Children," and that's very good. So, and yes, the cost exactly the costs of it are really high, and it's ultimately destructive. And I I was a very habitual weed smoker for about 10 years, and I I'll just say that when I stopped, I think there's a difference. I don't believe that people who are just caught with using should have like harsh prison sentences or anything like that. But I think that the the consequences for these things being legalized has not been good at all. And I will say that when I stopped, frankly, I I had forgotten what it was like to have a clear head. And I thought to myself, oh, it's not a big deal because I wait till after work and stuff. And when I finally stopped, even not for almost like not because I thought it was bad. I had reasons for stopping that at the time were almost coincidental. But once I did get back to having a clear head, I was like, I'm never going back to what it was before. And that's not even getting into the spiritual reasons that I have for not doing it, but just on the level of mental clarity. Um, it was this very profound realization. But and then yeah, what is the value add? Yeah, exactly. Um, so there's a lot of good stuff on this. Yeah, Alex Berenson's a good resource. I just think on a level of policy, it's been a total failure.
Thank you for that, Peter. Joshua?
Yeah, thanks. I take a little bit of umbrage. I'm not, and never was I suggesting that we ought to legislate morality. What I said was that essentially that we ought to, if we're going to legislate things, we ought to legislate health. I would also say that, thanks, Dean. I would also say that it's a conservative principle to regulate a thing in order to reduce the cost of another thing. That might not be a libertarian principle, Wesley, but it's certainly a conservative principle if we're going to stick to sort of labels. If we just if we could, for example, look, we get SNAP benefits, right? We have SNAP benefits and things like that. EBT cards, you can use those for anything from, from soda to, ultra processed bologna and American plastic cheese that you see people throwing on, babies' heads lately on their little TikTok videos. Okay, that's not healthy, right? Obesity is the #1 cause of medical expense in this country. And if we wanted to affect, and frankly, I think it's a very conservative principle to focus on reducing obesity levels in this country, in order to see healthcare savings. So that's all I was talking about. That doesn't have anything to do with my bourbon problem. Completely agree with Peter regarding marijuana. So I live in downtown Norfolk, and there's so many things that I never thought about prior to to the actual implementation of the deregulation of recreational marijuana use. And in Virginia, it's sort of decriminalized for personal use. Medical marijuana, you still have to have a card, but in Virginia, it's sort of a gray area here. They can't figure out from one administration to the next what they want to do in the state. But I can't go anywhere. I can't even drive on 64 with my windows down without running through a cloud of weed smoke. And look, I'm not a chemist, but weed smoke just seems to be heavier and oilier than cigarette smoke. And I didn't like running into cigarette smoke either, but cigarette smoke dissipates. There's something about marijuana smoke that just lingers in an area, right? Look, and I go to a restaurant downtown for lunch, and it's like, are you gonna take my order, or are you gonna just smoke weed right out on the sidewalk? I'm confused about what's happening here. Anyway, that's just sort of, I'm an old person and I'm venting, I guess, a little bit. Peter, I saw you on TV the other day when I was on vacation. It was you, Black Widow.
Oh,
and,
yes, my doppelganger.
And Bruce Banner, and y'all were getting ready to go deal with Thanos. So I just wanted to shout out.
All right, you old guys, let's bring some young folks in. Shamsul, let's hear from you. Shamsul,
Hey.
Kuala Lumpur.
Excuse me. Okay, I think we can go on this bill for quite some time, if you ask me. Really, there's quite a lot to pick on and mention. I think you guys are not giving Josh the credit. He was basically trying to figure it out from my point of view, rather than actually making a judgment on things. I understand where he's coming from with respect to the
deficit. Send me a bill already, Shamsul. Just send me a bill, bro.
Okay. All right. I want to say this before I forget for tonight, actually. I want to thank all of you guys, for your support just now on my points and questions on the two-way with Mark and Sean and Dan. That was not an easy thing for me to be saying, to be honest, especially on live programming. But I just felt that I had to say out the truth. And I felt that it has not really been talked about ever since the ceasefire in Iran. But I think truth has got to be said. And I wanted a conversation. So I had to bring my point of view, and I want to thank you guys for the support. It's not easy. If I tell you guys, the blowback I may get is you guys don't understand. Okay, so thanks a lot for that. Yeah, I'll give it back to Peter. Peter, you want to add anything?
Sure. Just as an extra resource, I posted a video in the chat. It's an interview with a guy who does a lot of policy work related to in Colorado, and he does a really good job of explaining the negative consequences of the marijuana legalization in Colorado. Just a really good example, since Colorado was kind of the ground zero for that happening. And I think with regards to, and I think it's an even more open and shut case with regards to health, which was Josh's original point. Now, I do think that Robert Kennedy actually does prefer more of a radical transparency approach, which is more like people can have these unhealthy foods if they want, but they should have the most full knowledge of what is going into them, all these food, whether it's food dyes or ultra processed things, seed oils, other things. And so I think that that's the approach that they're taking there. That being said, I do think that, yes, it's not a libertarian position to want to regulate these things, but I do Edmund Burke would have no problem with using the power of the state to ensure that there's not millions of obese people. So the idea that it's not conservative, I mean, whatever the word conservative means these days, is just frankly silly. That's all I really wanted to add there.
Thank you for that, Peter. And that's going to round out the live episode, live portion of our show, right? We do have some good news though, right? This allulose, it's a GLP-1 sweetener is the, shortest version I can give of that. Keto Pint ice cream, Keto Pint ice cream bars. Okay. Good egg protein without the sugar. All right. And then we have Rebel brand ice cream that also has a 0 carb variety with the egg protein that we need for choline. Choline is very important. So unlike prohibition of alcohol, where it's like, well, then what are my choices, right? There are actual market choices where it tastes just as good. So you get all the upsides, right? Which is, what's the upside of sweet? The upside is, whoa, I'm in a bad mood. I had ice cream. I'm feeling better. Without the downside, the crash, the diabetes, the obesity, whatnot, right? This is all just from experience of living with my folks, living with carb addicts, right? And you can't fight them, so you got to join them, not with the carbs, but with the sweet, with a healthy and safe sweet. So that's our positive message, our Maha plug. And folks, bear with me as we go through our outro. 1 second, here we go.
Sorry if we cut anyone off, but that's a wrap. Remember, you can catch us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. It's your chance to join the conversation and have your voice heard. Just check the link in the description or visit americastalk.show. Together, through the free exchange of ideas, we can truly make America great again. Don't miss out. Tune in and be part of the dialogue.